Hi, everyone. Welcome to Talks with Gallagher, where we have conversations that inspire and empower. Today, I have LaTricia Morris, and she is the brand revivalist and founder of Ox and Iron, a branding agency that works with companies undergoing major shifts, such as mergers, preparation for franchising, or marketing repositioning, to reestablish brand clarity and presence. Her company develops strategic brand systems, including logos, messaging, websites, and collateral to better communicate their value and clarity and confidence. And I'm just so excited to have you on, LaTricia, from one creative to the other. I love having creatives on the podcast, and I'm really excited to just unpack also your journey into, your business, starting your business with Ox and Iron, and also how your faith has played a role in all of that. So thank you for being on Talks with Gallagher.
Hey, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So, how has your walk with God, shaped your approach to business?
Oh my gosh, how is it not? When it comes to, having our walk with God be part of the business that we're running, like I think there's so much that happens in business where it's like it is a walk by faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's always that combination of like going with what you know, going with the expertise that you've worked in, going with all of these other things, but then also saying, you know what, without God, like I can't do this, So, I got out here recently, I joked with somebody, we were talking about, walking in step with the Holy Spirit. And I'm like, sometimes that can seem like a casual stroll. And sometimes it can feel like parkour, especially in business where it's like there are those faith leaps that like, once you're going, there's no pumping the brakes, don't check up. You just see they open it and you go. And so I feel like when it comes to business and just how God's used it to really shape me, is just been amazing. It challenges you for sure in a lot of ways. Everything from the core of your identity systems on up, everything gets challenged in the process.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. So, like, what moments of faith, gave you that courage to then step out and start Ox and Iron, your company?
Back when I launched the company, I originally thought I thought I was launching a side gig, right? And it was like, I kind of had a feeling about it. It was funny because there were so many people that would come up and they would give words about what they saw God doing with Ox and Iron. And I was just like, okay, kind of put it in my pocket. And finally, at the time I was working in a commercial real estate brokerage, and I was doing both the commercial real estate brokerage and running Ox and Iron. And I was seeing both things grow at the same time, which was cool. But at the same time, it's like, okay, I can't climb two ladders at the same time. And I told my husband, I'm like, I just feel like what God's putting in my hands, I need both hands to take hold of. That being said, because it was at that side gig phase, it was definitely not at full-time income phase. So it was like, there was also that side of me. It's like, oh, the plan B, plan C, plan D, do I keep these other things going? But it was just a place where I really felt challenged and saying, okay, like, do you trust or do you not? And for my journey in particular, it was, I felt like that call was to let go of the other things, just trust what he was doing and let him walk me through that process. And it's just been so cool to see how he's responded, every time he's presented me with those choices and then to choose, and then he responds with what he wants to do. Right.
Yes. Yeah. So this sounds like out of obedience to in a relationship with God. You started this, but did your past, work experiences, life experiences, prepare you for starting Ox and Iron?
Yeah, so there's really been so much of my journey that looking back in retrospect, I can see where he was doing things, right? At the moment that I started it, I was not in a place where I was like, oh, well, I'm just going to go be a branding agent, right? Like I think had I even been thinking in those terms at that time, I might've gotten a little scared and skirted out the side door, at the time that I launched it, I knew design. And what I feel like is so cool to see is God bringing things full circle. So like, even where I can say that, back in the day when I went to college and did all these things, like I didn't see that coming up in the future, but looking back even before that, there were signs, right? Like even when I would 16, 17 years old. I was working in restaurants and I had this like massive art book that I would like draw out all these business concepts. And it wasn't just like, oh, okay, like cute little ideas. It was like, here's how it's going to look. Here's the experience people are going to have. Like I was mapping out whole business concepts then. And I always had a love for it. I just didn't know like how that was going to translate into what I was going to do with my life, particularly from the place I was coming from. Like when I went to college and I started off on like my vocational journey, if you will, it was coming from a place of looking for my own sense of security, looking for me to make my own way. And I kind of, you know, I can kind of laugh looking back at it where none of it was wasted, right? It was used it to grow me in different areas and allow me to develop different tools that I even still use today. But it just showed the contrast of what life can be and how hard it can be when we're trying to make our own way versus alignment with his way. And like, no, baby girl, this is what I actually made you for, what I actually gifted you in. And that's why all these other, I'm telling you, the amount of frustration and like times of crying in my car I ran into, oh my God, I'm not like, what am I not getting? This is before I launched my company, right? I'm like, God, what am I not getting here? Like, I know I'm checking all these boxes, and it's not that from an aptitude perspective, like I understand this work. Why am I not succeeding here? But it was like he allowed me to go through those challenges to channel me right into a place where it was like, okay, from the time that I launched it, I felt like I hit my stride in what he was telling me to do. And like that in itself is just such a remarkable gift. I was in my car even going somewhere yesterday that it was like, I was invited to be on an advisory panel, but it was seeing how he worked things out from the first job that I got in Lancaster that would seem totally unrelated, but brought it around. So it's like that connection was made, that even in a time when I was like, you know, like, God, what is this? And like trying to pray my way out of that season. I'm looking back and it's like, thank you for opening that door then that I didn't even know you were stepping me through. And so it's just like the stories you get to stack when you get to have your God walk, you know, in business is just so cool.
Yeah, isn't it interesting that like when you go through that journey, you don't really know why, you know, you're doing what you're doing in your, you know, work and career experience. But then when you look back, you're like, oh yeah, God was like, you know, he was like designing my path in what I was doing for the future. So like, what was like one of the biggest challenges that you faced, you know, with Ox and Iron, and how did you overcome that?
Well, I have to pick just one.
You can pick any or more than one.
So I you know, I think there's one of the big challenges. Okay. And I think this is one that is common among other business owners and entrepreneurs, especially people who like me are coming from a background of not having all the training, not having all the tools, not having all the resources, getting something off the ground, completely bootstrap. I launched Ox and Iron off of less than $400, right?
Wow.
And it was like, it was coming out of saying, okay, well, design work I can do. I've been using Adobe Creative Cloud since they launched it in 2013. I'll just take on whatever projects people want to send me. And the work kind of speaks for itself, right? Like you either have an eye for design or you don't. You know how to use the tools or you don't. The end product testifies as to, you know, whether or not you know that. However, you know, part of that learning curve was also how to run a business off of that. Like, because there's having talent, having giftings, having skills and abilities, but translating that into an actual business can be very different. It's a totally different mindset you have to go through. And I feel like a lot of it has been and continues to be the identity shift that I have to, that God has had me making, transitioning from the mindsets that come with certain identity systems to letting him basically overhaul all the junk, right? From, you know, all the junk that comes in from the past, all the junk that comes in from us looking at our circumstances, our self-doubt, and all of the other stuff that we carry on. And he's like, that stuff is not going to serve you where I'm taking you. We need to transition you into a new identity. And so that you are more in alignment with who it is that I made you to be. And, you know, that being part of the package, because it was like, when I first started it out, I didn't realize my value. I was always second guessing and self-doubting and all of these other things that, looking back on it, I can see like it was sabotaging my success from that point, and it was causing me to settle for a lot less. It was causing me to deal with things I shouldn't have been deal with. It was like there were so many things that could attach to saying, like, man, if only I had known then what he's showing me as of this point, even like how different that part could have been. And again, none of it's wasted, right? But when it comes to that journey, like there's just so many things that's like, man, hangups and stuff like that. It's just like, thank God for his graciousness and walking me through the process, because it's definitely not been like this. I know he's blessed it. I know he's anointed it. But I think when we say that, like when we hear other people say that, we feel like it's like, oh, they stepped into it and the clouds parted and everything was just so easy. And it was like, no.
Yeah,
it was
right.
the trenches. Like I probably still have dirt behind my ear. Like it's
Yeah. Well, thanks for being, really real and raw and, realistic about just, your process through those particular challenges that you have had to work through. And you are a successful business owner, and but you didn't let those particular challenges stop you from moving forward. So what is the story behind the name Ox and Iron?
So Ox and Iron was a name that I come up with again when I was like looking at, I'm like, okay, I'm going to launch this, launch this as a side gig. I was still in real estate at that time, but needed to get some financial traction, and where I thought I was waiting out the season. And I was really just thinking about it. And those two terms kept coming to mind, and I didn't really like any other configuration for it. And I was like, okay, we're just going to put them together, Ox and Iron. But I felt like it was one of those that started to unpack as I was using it. And then like, even from launch, seeing where it's like, an example I often give people is like, if I was to hand you a bag of seed and tell you to go out and sow a field, you might get a decent way through and be able to produce an okay crop. But what difference is it going to make when you have the power of that ox to help you pull that vision forward, to break new ground in a way that's going to allow you to sow more and create a greater harvest for everybody else involved? And so I just like, it was something that really stuck with me, especially with when you look at the nature of the oxen, where it's like, whether the ground is soft, whether the ground is hard, if it's rocky, they're just going to keep pushing and plowing forward, not being deterred by the challenge that's ahead of them. And so it was cool to see how, like, when I originally launched my agency, it was launched as a creative agency, focusing more on graphic design, really walking with God and seeing where he was leading me, with the projects and the clients that I kept getting to work with, seeing where he was pulling it more into branding specifically and all of that, especially as he was, calling me into like the Brand Revivalist and operating off that. Like, I thought it was cool looking back and saying, okay, like, where does the term branding come from? It's actually from the word brander, BRANDR. I forget the original language of it, but it referring to the stamping of livestock. So it was just kind of like, that was a very long answer to a short
No, that was fantastic. I have like a bunch of light bulbs going off in my mind right now because of what you just shared. I think that analogy of seed time and harvest is very powerful, actually, and I could see how that would correspond now to ox and iron. And yeah, that's very good, because I think as creatives too, I think sometimes there's creatives that don't necessarily align themselves with certain, kingdom or biblical principles, like, sowing and reaping and all that. And, with your company, aligning yourself with those values, I believe is very, very wise and also powerful at the same time. So can you unpack, that was interesting what you're saying about brand, but you call yourself also a brand revivalist, and reviving a brand. Can you just unpack that a little bit more for us?
Yeah. So, when we talk about branding, I find myself going through a lot of, educational conversations, because a lot of times when we say branding, it seems like this, for some people, it's a very small term, like logos, color, typography. And that's kind of like their understanding of branding. For some people, it seems like a really big, but elitist kind of term. Like, this is what the, bigger companies and bigger brands do, but it's really not even that. When you look at branding, and I feel like this is where all the more why God has set me on the journey with it, is it's really about identity systems. And it pivots around a lot of mechanisms of communication, but really it's identity at its core, right? How we operate, how we engage with the world around us, who is absolutely impacted by who we believe ourselves to be. right? I remember hearing years back a saying that was like, nobody can consistently behave in a way that is incongruent with who they believe themselves to be. And I see that as being something that trips a lot of people up, because without that firm understanding of identity, particularly in business, we go out to the market looking for a way to make money off of the thing that we have to sell. Right? We kind of go out and it's like, well, I have this thing, now who will buy it? And there isn't a lot of clarity there. And that chaos that ends up being on the other side of that is something that actually can repel a lot of people, where we should be looking to get those resources, get those the products, the service that we have to offer into the hands of the people that need and want them the most. We should be out there genuinely solving problems and bringing solutions out into the world. And I truly wholeheartedly believe that each person has been gifted with something of value to bring into the world, to bless the world around them. And so one of the things that I love about branding is helping people get that clarity that's often lacking. And that's where, part of that bio is saying that, we help people show up with greater clarity and confidence, is because when you have a firmer understanding of who it is that you are and who your business is here to serve and how you're going to serve those people, then it can make you so much more like unstoppable in the marketplace, right? You don't get so easily distracted by all the shiny things over here and over there, these other coaches that are promising you all of these results, selling a thing that's really not your lane to be in to begin with, right?
Right.
And you become more focused. When you become more focused, you become more powerful and impactful in the marketplace. One of the things that I say often that I love about the business that I have is the opportunity to help other people amplify their impact. And that coming again out of that place of understanding that each person has been given these incredible gifts. And there are some people like, I won't just say some, these, all these other people, right? They have giftings to reach the world in a way that I myself may not be able to directly, right?
Right.
But at the same time, if I can help them get their message to more of the people that need it, or their products or services to more of the people that need them, then in that, it's like I get to have that little reach out into the world too, like by helping them extend their reach. So I love it.
Wow, man, there's a lot you just said right there, but I'd like to just maybe zoom in a little bit more on identity systems. What does that mean exactly? Because we have kind of like three different kind of demographics here. We have business owners, business leaders, then we have people that are, faith-based leaders. And then we have those, emerging, ones that want to start a business. They're really excited and they want to start a business, or they've been doing freelance for a while and they want to really kind of get off the ground even more. So, can you just share with us a little bit more about what identity systems is exactly?
Yeah. So are we looking at more from like just a branding in the general sense, or in a Christian context, or both?
Can we do both?
Yeah, we can do both.
Great.
I'll start off in a general context, right?
Yeah.
In saying that when we're looking at brand development, when I get the chance to work with somebody who is saying, look, I really want to, build on my brand or bring my brand back to life, right? Whether it's a startup or a rebrand, we really want to understand who that company is at the core. And that being, a lot of times when I have conversations with companies, there isn't a lot of clarity as to who it is that they're really trying to target, or even the value that they really have to offer. And so, a lot of times they're trying to sell a thing without understanding the value that they're actually conferring to that person that they're selling it to. So a classic example might be a cleaning company that wants to sell more cleaning services to 40-year-old moms. And they're thinking they're selling that mom a really clean house. And it's like, okay, well, sure, you're selling her a clean house, but what do you really, like, where is she really at in her life? What is she really experiencing? What is she actually processing? And it's like you go through these exercises and it teaches you to see people, like genuinely see people. I think that's something that we too easily lose, especially in our super online, hyper social culture. That's like, we've got all these screens up, right? Is that so often it's easy to lose sight of people. And when we lose sight of people and where they're really at, it becomes hard to craft resonant messaging for them. So when we take that cleaning company, for example, if I'm working with them and I'm saying, okay, we're trying to understand who it is that you are and who it is that you're looking to serve. Well, who it is that they're looking to serve is not just a 40-year-old mom who is busy and doesn't want to have to clean the house. She's probably somebody who's stressed out. She is probably feeling bad about the fact that she's not being able to keep up with all of these things. She's feeling swamped. She's feeling overwhelmed. And you're actually giving her the opportunity to feel like she can breathe again, where she feels like she's taking control of things for her family. She's doing a good thing by, still being able to keep up with having the household be in a certain environment for her family. Like, there are so many other things we could continue unpacking, but we never really get to that, nor can we craft messaging that speaks to that value if we stop at the surface and say a 40-year-old mom who just wants her house clean, right? And so really, like, when we go in and we're doing brand development, we're doing deep dive exercises to understand our ideal client, and not just from a surface level of like age and social status and all of these other things, but like, what does her day-to-day look like, or what does his day-to-day look like, right? We want to unpack all of that, coupling that with the identity system of the company. Okay. So you have a company that is, maybe like, I'm here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and, we'll just pluck it out of my pocket. We'll take a local roofing company. I recently just helped him with a smaller project, but when we were talking about his brand, it's like, okay, well, there are a lot of other roofing companies, but what's special about this one in particular? Okay, well, he is particularly passionate about veterans and first responders. He has a certain, he comes from a lineage of that, and with family that were in military and a lot of first responder work, and he has a strong passion for giving back. He also coaches, like softball and stuff like that. So he's involved in the community, and like, you start to uncover, like, these are the unique qualities of this business. The better you're able to understand the business at its core, the better you can identify differentiators that can be brought to the surface in the messaging, right? So have like, and the differentiation is just one kind of like one point that we could pick. Like, if you're asking me about branding, I can unpack this for days, right? Like,
I'm sure you can.
Right. So like, without having that understanding of the identity of who that company really is, if they don't even understand it, how is the market expected to understand it? Right. And when the market doesn't understand how you're different from any of your competitors, they default to comparing you on price. You become a commodity. And that can be very much to the detriment of that potential client or customer, depending upon what their other options are and whose hands they might fall into if you as a business owner don't do your job to make sure that they understand why you're a good fit for them. We have a way of, when it comes to branding and marketing, I think a lot of times people have a tendency to frame it in a way that actually hinders their growth, because it has a certain connotation to it that they don't feel good about. But really, what I've come to learn is that in business, because I used to be the same way, like, I don't want to sell people stuff. I don't want to. No, I'm looking to get out there and help people. And like, when you truly believe in the value it is that you have to bring, and you're out there offering solutions to solve real problems or help people realize a really great desire or dream outcome, then you owe it to them to market it well. And you can't really market it well if you don't have a good understanding of those factors, of the brand's identity factors, the ideal client's identity factors, and then the communication that needs to happen between the two to bridge the gap.
Wow. Yes. Yeah. So this is so good right now, what we're talking about. And I think this is going to help a lot of people. Like, what is like one of the single biggest mistakes you see like business owners making with their brand in 2025? Like for like profit, like for profits and not for profits, both.
I mean, one of the things that could easily be plucked out, and I know some people hear me talk about this ad nauseum. I'm not completely anti this, but I would say one of the things that I see in the current state of our market, right, is the overuse of AI. And that being because people, like, you can use it, but you need to know how to use it and how to filter it and how, you know what I mean? Like, it's one thing to say, I'm going to use it to organize thoughts. It's another thing to say that I'm going to use it to cut corners and to maybe put stuff out there that suggests that I'm an expert in something I'm not. It's another, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many different things and it can a lot of times hurt their brand because it's not facilitating the genuine connections that people may want to have with your brand. You know what I mean? And like, even just having authentic communication where it's like, it feels like you're being talked to by a person, as opposed to talked at by a corporation, hoping that you'll buy. Like, people feel it in a very real way, especially in our current culture where there's so much stuff out there with social media, and you do have a lot of stuff that's generated by bots, right? Or people are bombarded with all these ad messages and everything. And, there are a lot of people that I talk to that have an assumption that, like, especially our upcoming generation, that they're disconnected, they're checked out. But what I'm actually seeing is that these are people that want to get back to having real connection, right? They want authenticity. They're being bombarded by things that they're like, I don't even know if this is real or not. And that's not a secure, comfortable place for anybody to be. So when you add more of that to your brand and its messaging with those cut corners, then I feel like it hurts more than helps when it doesn't foster the connections that it should, or it doesn't communicate as authentically as it should. So I feel like the people that are really winning in big ways in the market are finding ways to authentically connect with their market.
Having that human to human connection, right? In the communication, and then also in what you kind of were describing earlier about, like, with the brand and all that. So do you, like, as a creative, how should we harness, the technology of AI, or should we? What are your thoughts on that?
I think we should, right? I think it would be a misstep to not take advantage of it as the tool that it can be. But my personal thing with it, or my personal take on it, is that it should be a tool that we use to take care of maybe some of the mundane tasks, or the things that would take us longer to do than what it should, to make room for us to go back to connections. Because we talked about, like, branding in general, and then from a Christian perspective, and even just business with a Christian perspective, what is the point of business, right? One of the things that I have long loved about business is that it creates a place for us to have relationships we probably wouldn't have otherwise. Through business, through work. When I was working as an employee, and since I've stepped out into owning my own business, there have been so many amazing relationships that I have gotten to enjoy that I would never have just stepped into if it was just based on me getting around my little circle of people with similar interests in a similar age group, right? But then you come to encounter people in a really unique way as you engage in day-to-day business. And that's why marketplace ministry is so powerful, and why I say use the tools, use the tech to streamline the stuff on the back end, to give you more time and availability to show up even with a better energy to bring to those relationships, because those relationships are what really matters. In business, we get so caught up in the next big goal and running the successful company and calling all of these other things the big things, that we can easily forget that the people are the big things that we're called to. And so use the tools, sure, but don't lose the priorities when doing so.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that's going to help a lot of emerging business leaders, and also current business leaders, to make sure that their priorities are in the right place. I'm curious, like, regarding, like, your clients, like, how did you, when you were launching this, like, how did you find your clients? Or, did you just reach out to them? Or, like, how did you find the pool of clients that you have had now up to this point?
Yeah, sure. So a number of different ways. When I first launched my business, because I was in real estate at the time, real estate's one of those fields that, like, as much as most realtors have multiple revenue streams, right? Like, they have multiple streams of income. However, we don't talk about those things, right? Because people who are not in that vocation, a lot of times it's like, it almost doesn't matter what you say you also do, unless you've been established in the game, like, decades on decades. Like, a lot of times, if they hear that you're in real estate and something else, it doesn't matter how prestigious this title is. In their minds, it's like, you're not a good realtor, and you might as well be bagging groceries at the grocery store. Like,
oh my.
At least, my own experience in just how people respond to others who are doing both, where they're working in real estate and that. So at first I thought, well, I got to launch this, but I can't really tell anybody, but I have to tell somebody, or else it's not really.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I did it as more of like a silent launch, if you will. And I know that probably sounds stupid, because, like, who who quietly launches a business, like, slip it out as a secret in the middle of the night? But when I originally launched my business, it was more, something I put out there to my smaller sphere of contacts, where I'm like, hey, at that time I was still very much invested in real estate. and still very, actively looking for clients and that, happy to help anybody in any way that I could. But where the market was, as everybody understood it was, right? Everybody 2022 post COVID, like after COVID, we all know what was happening in the real estate market, right? And so in that time, it was easy enough for me to say, while the market is doing what it's doing, I figured I would turn my attentions to helping other businesses that want to improve how they're able to show up in front of their clients and customers. And so at that point, I was doing, definitely a lot of graphic design projects, and it would be anything from, promotional assets like flyers, business cards, brochures, all of that, logo design, but also doing web design projects and those sort of things. From that point, it just kept continuing to build from word of mouth and referrals. And then I, stacked on top of that, I ended up joining a local chapter of BNI. That in itself has been really great for my business. And I don't say that try to I don't get kickbacks from promoting that organization by any means. I became a fan of it as I realized how hard it can be to market yourself to a bunch of cold leads, as opposed to getting connected somewhere local where you're in among a bunch of other business owners that have, the same goal the same goal and commitment to that goal of really putting in the effort to grow a successful company alongside other, strong professionals. So it was, those two things were game changers in my business. And it's just continued to grow from that. I don't really do so much with like ad spend. I have other things that I'm looking to launch soon enough that, I'll put ad spend behind, but most of it's just been from those genuine connections. So it's that I can be grateful for.
Yeah, that's very good. And I think, that can show like other business, emerging leaders that, there are opportunities of networking out there. It's just a matter of, finding and discovering where they are at, like you have. So how does your faith play a role in your day-to-day business? How do you have, your, you as a life of a believer, how does that look like being integrated in your day-to-day business?
One thing that comes to mind when you say that is when we were doing a meeting for the Christian Business Collective, and Zach, and it wouldn't say that, he said this after the fact, but it was after I'd already started my business and everything like that. But it just if it could sum it up, was one of the comments that he made was that he said, Jesus is professional at the highest level. And I'm like, he ain't wrong. And when you look at the biblical principles, when applied, they genuinely do lead to success. And that doesn't mean that every endeavor that we step out into, even doing it in, sometimes we might start a business and for some reason that thing not work out because God's repositioning us. But biblical principles still work, right? When it comes to how we do business, there are a lot of business coaches out there with a lot of opinions on how business should be done. There are a lot of people out there that will tell you all day about how you can do sales and all of this, that, and the other. But it's at the end of my life, I want my life to have had meaning, and I want the business that I've done to have had genuine impact and not just sales. Sales you chase and money you chase, and it comes and it goes. But impact is really where your legacy comes in. And that sense of legacy, not even being for the sake of my name being remembered when it's all said and done, but how well I let his name be known by the way I live my life. I often have gone back to saying, let my life be my hallelujah. I don't want to just be the one that says, hey, I'm a Christian business, like a Christian business owner, and then that's not evident in what I do. I want this to be there's a book titled Work as Worship. That should encompass how we do business. When it comes to being Christians in business, Christian entrepreneurship, or really in any kind of leadership roles, or just even employed somewhere, right? It should shape how we engage with the world around us in such a way that even if we never said hey, I'm a Christian business owner, people that engage with us should be able to understand there's something different about this, right? It has huge implications on how we do business. It's one thing to say I'm a Christian business owner and I put a Jesus sticker on my door or a scripture on my website, right? And then maybe I tithe, but this is these are table stakes. Come on. If we're being you should, if you're a Christian in business, there's, I'm not saying you even have to put the scripture on your site, but you know what I mean? Just in general, being somebody who tithes, being somebody who upholds integrity and Christian values. But my thing is, and what I'm so passionate about, why I love what we do with the Christian Business Collective and all of that, is that my true passion is to see that spill over into every area of business, right? So how we steward resources, right? We got a lot of people out there that struggle with money mindsets, especially coming out of the church, where they feel a lot of guilt and shame around the idea of going out and making money. And I'm like, I want to make money because I want to snatch it out of the enemy's hands and redivert those resources into kingdom business. Like like me not making money is not me going out and doing a noble thing by me saying, oh, I don't, and I don't mean this as no insult to Christians, right?
Oh, no, I appreciate you speaking on this. Yeah, this is Raw and Unfiltered with Talks with Gallagher, so I love your touching on this.
But I'm saying, like, I'm saying this coming from a poverty background, poverty mindset. I know what it's like to grow up on welfare. I know what it's like to be homeless. I know what it's like to feel guilty around money and what I'm charging people and going through all that junk. But then it was like, God's had me in it just working through all of it and shifting views and saying, you know what, like if I make less, it doesn't mean that there are less resources out there or more resources for somebody else. It's just it's just like blood flow, right? It just changes the direction that it's going. If you were to take, crack cocaine off the street today, then the amount of money that's going into that, we'll call it industry, whatever, but the amount of money that's going into that would not magically vanish, right? It's still going to be in circulation. The question is, where are those resources circulating to? So my mindset around that as being Christian entrepreneurs is, from a financial perspective, is how can we leverage what has been entrusted to us? I say that often. When you think leadership, I want you to think leverage. How can we leverage what has been entrusted to us to go out and multiply, right? To bring in more resources so that people that are operating from kingdom principles and values can then determine how those resources get allocated into the rest of the marketplace and the things that they can go to fund, right? And sometimes that's benevolence, going, and putting money into charitable organizations, feeding kids who are hungry and things like that. It's also in terms of, like, if my company stays at this level, how many opportunities can I create? But if my company expands, then what are the possibilities for the opportunities I could create for maybe other creatives or other people who have giftings to bring into the workplace to come into a place of business where now they feel like they have opportunity, they can feel valued. We can, like the nature and the context of their work environment, right? How can that shape the family life that they go home to afterward because of the difference in the atmospheres that they're working in? Like, you could unpack it in a million different directions, but like when we really start to shape our businesses around Christian principles, around biblical principles, God's way of doing things, then that's where amazing things open up for everybody involved. It changes how we engage with our clients and customers. It gives us the ability to be more open and receptive to innovative solutions to meet needs. One of the things that when we talk about even innovation in the marketplace, what is the absolute top tier innovation? Top tier innovation is not I came up with a new thing. It's that I was open for Holy Spirit to show me a new thing. Revelation is top tier innovation. So when we walk with God in how we do business, and we're like, okay, God, I got this client coming in. How do I even help them? How do I help them overcome this obstacle? How do I help them overcome this challenge? The solutions that he can bring about versus what we would have come up with if we're trying to sit over here and do it on our own, and we're thinking from a revenue perspective. It put, like the contrast between the mental state that you're in and operating in either place is huge. And so like, I love seeing people, really get into the God walk of that journey where he is allowed to come in, like they let him just permeate what it is that they're doing. And it just opens up so much. And it radically change how they do business. It radically changes how they engage with people in the marketplace. And when you do that, when you allow Holy Spirit to infiltrate everything that you're doing in business, it opens up the opportunity for you to not only run a more profitable business, but a more impactful business. And that to me is huge.
Yeah, that is huge. And I was looking at your website, oxeniron.co, and you have quite a few clients there listed in your portfolio. Is there one particular client that you can share like, how you've been able to help them, produce or just, get to a better level in their company with, with your expertise and anointing?
Oh gosh, you stack that one on there, like your expertise and anointing, like no pressure on that one, right? um, like fortunately, I've had the opportunity to work with a pretty dynamic mix of clientele, everything from home construction to vineyard to the U.S. kickboxing team, and like a pretty broad range. I would say one of my favorite rebranding projects would have been what I got to do with Kenwood Construction, because he really he was very much invested in the outcome of what we set out to do, and gave me room to work with him from the ground up to develop his brand. So it was cool because here, the owner of it, he is amazing at what he does. The work that company produces is outstanding. When I first got to sit and have conversation with him, the website that he had, the logo that he had, did not adequately represent that, right? Like it gave a very different impression of the level of professional that he is. And so he was saying, he's like, I'm struggling to get leads. I got, I'm paying for marketing and it's not getting me anywhere. And I'm like, well, if I go out and I am opening a brick and mortar and I have 1 million people come through my door and nobody buys anything, then I'm not going to think that the answer is to get 1 million more people through my door. I'm going to be looking at what is the experience that they're having when they come in that's stopping them on that journey and telling them that I'm not a good fit for them, right? And so we really went through, we unpacked his company. We had, some deep table talk discussions, and then I brought that back, did research, developed his brand guidelines. Once we got those brand guidelines in, we moved into redeveloping his logo, his website, and then the number of marketing assets that he has to go along with that. So for everything from signage to business cards, email signatures, you name it, but making sure that all of his branding assets were cohesive. One of the things that I loved was the day that he came in to a meeting that I was having with him after we had already gone through that whole process. And he had said that he was coming back from meeting with a woman that was potentially a $200,000 client that he got strictly from, it wasn't from running an ad, it wasn't from anything. She found his website. So the discovery component, we made sure that it was discoverable based off of like the baked in SEO from the get-go. She discovered his site organically and loved what she saw. He got the appointment, and he's like, to me, the winning part of it was that not just the price point of that client, but he was like, she was precisely the ICA that we developed in the brand guidelines, right? So what does it take to get that? Like, this is saying we started off by unpacking that brand, who it is that this company is, who it is that is his ideal client. And then all of the messaging that came out of that was shaped around him speaking to her. And because it was shaped out of him speaking to her, the message hits harder. A lot of companies are afraid to tailor their messaging down that way, but I've found that it's actually a very good way to help people develop a very strong brand voice that helps them to stand out in a marketplace where it's so much clutter and noise. So that was one that I thought was just, to me, I absolutely loved it. And then even stacking on that, I still get compliments from not only other professionals, but other people who would be who would run kind of horizontally alongside me in marketing, where he has other companies that handle the SEO management and ongoing Google ads and things like that.
Okay.
So when he engages with those companies, those brand guidelines, I'm handing off the kit. Here you go. This is what we developed. And they are always ecstatic to receive it, because a lot of clients don't have that in place. And they're like, okay, well, they're kind of starting from scratch, right? So instead of that, they're receiving it. And now they know how they can do their job while still very much accurately representing his brand in the marketplace. So the message stays cohesive. Those brand guidelines, they get handed off to not just marketers, but staff members and stuff like that. When we develop those for companies, it helps the whole team show up as a cohesive and united front moving that brand forward. And so that I absolutely love seeing, like a million times over. I love seeing it. But yeah, I mean, just the dynamics with each of the different businesses that I've gotten to work with. I always love unpacking, each of their stories and all of that. And it's like to see them shift. It's just cool seeing them shift as they go through that process, where the light bulbs come on.
Yes, for sure. And it's almost like you're able to keep the potency of who they are, but then still at the same time simplify it so that people know exactly the value that they bring as a company, right?
Mhm.
Because you're right, because there's so much noise out there, and people seem like they just make kind of a quick decision in a sense in this fast-paced world
Yeah.
based upon what they are visually seeing.
Mhm.
So I mean, is that fairly accurate? Is like you keeping kind of that potency of what
Mhm.
of what the brand of the company is, and just
Yeah.
making it really straightforward for other people to know, other clients to know what they have to offer.
Yeah, and I'm actually glad that you pointed to that noise that people are up against, because
Yeah.
with that noise, there is also a strong sense of overwhelm that I see
Mm,
a lot of business owners walk through, especially as they feel like they have to be in all the places to do all the things, and that if they're not checking off every single one of those boxes in trying to market their business, that they're failing, that it just becomes too much. And so, when
mm,
we go through and we're doing brand development, part of those exercises is not only understanding who their people are, but the well that their people hang out around. Right. So, like,
mm,
I don't want to be in every single place with my message necessarily. I want to be positioned so that I'm in a good position to be seen by the people who need and want what I have to offer. And then also learning how to speak their language, because otherwise, again, we get so diluted, we get so spread way too thin, super fragmented, desaturated. It's like trying
mhm.
to, how many times over can you water down the soup before it becomes unpalatable to everybody, right?
Right.
And so it's like, yeah, we do want to maintain a sense of potency. There are times when we take that message to a broad scale. Maybe you have an ad campaign that goes national or even global, but it still
Hmm.
should be speaking succinctly to a specific part of the market. And with that, it's like, even with all of the noise and feeling the pressure and the compulsion to be in all those different places, it allows you to say, you know what? These are not the best uses of my time. These are not the best uses of my resources. This is where I'm really going to get the best return and the best results. And then as you lean into those things that are giving you the best results, it allows you to, it can allow you to stack revenue and results in a way that has a compound effect, and also gives you more to be able to allocate into other things to expand, as you've got that really locked in. So I hope that answered your question. Maybe that's.
Yeah, I believe it does. Yeah, and just to clarify now, do you have more people on your team with Ox and Iron, or is it just primarily yourself?
So I have it structured in such a way where I subcontract when I need to
Oh, okay.
subcontract. And so, just trying to find like who I'm going to have locked in as far as like full-time employees and stuff like that. That hasn't been
Mm.
something that I've leaned too much in, particularly because a lot of the work that I've been busy about more recently has come down to like consulting, advisory, and things like that.
Oh,
We do
okay.
produce the deliverable,
Gotcha.
but the
Hmm.
consulting advisory part is a lot
Mm.
of like me being one-on-one with that client and being able to like
Hmm.
questions, answers, like doing interviews and stuff like that. Like,
Yes.
there are so many things, there are questions that you're asking me out of your expertise, and like what comes to mind when a certain thing is said, and it's like, you know what I mean, being able to play off of that. And so that's not something that I've necessarily found how or where to hand off just yet.
Okay.
But,
Yeah.
but when it's a task
Yeah.
that I can hand off, that where it's like, okay, I can put somebody in charge of this, like, yes, let's do that so we can be stronger together.
Yeah, because it's really impressive, because it seems like initially that you have multiple people working with Ox and Iron, because it's like you guys do so much. So I was just really curious. But since you're primarily the main point person for Ox and Iron,
Mhm.
and the founder, obviously, like, what systems do you have in place? Like, how do you like run your company effectively and efficiently with having the size of the team that you do have?
Yeah, well, I think a big thing comes down to, communications and expectations, right?
Mm,
Like having everybody on board when it comes to, and this is like even working, as I'm working with clients just as much as, a subcontractor, right? Is
yeah.
like making sure that we're all operating together, especially considering the nature of the work that I do and the nature of the projects that we're engaged in. And so, some things are very quick, tight turnaround, right? It might be
Hmm.
something that's like, it might only take us a couple days. There are other things that, it might, when we're doing like an extensive web build project, and then we've got all these other factors that are coming into play, like it has to
Mm,
be, obviously it has to be well orchestrated and well done. And so before I even start on a project like that with a client, I already have it even within my proposal, like timelines and milestones that we understand, like,
oh,
here's what
good.
you expect of me, here's what I expect of you. I found that that's been a huge thing for my own business,
Mm,
in my own, my own sanity, really, is being able to say, here's what I expect of you, here's what you can expect of me, and then here's what I can
mhm,
expect of you, and here's what you can expect of me. So it's steadily going, back and forth in
mm.
what we're doing to work together to bring that project to completion and do so well. I also use tools like ClickUp, for project management, so that
Oh,
making sure
okay.
the
Yeah.
boxes are getting
I've
checked.
used that.
So
Yeah.
from a software logistical perspective, tools
Hmm.
like that, because if you have it in your head, you can't, you can't. And I think even too,
Yeah.
like you hitting on systems and processes, like that was
Hmm.
something that, I talked about with my team, like probably, I mean, it's been a while back ago, but it's saying, okay, like if, making sure that that's locked in. It's like, if God gave us today what it is that we're asking for, praying for, believing for, would we be able to handle it and steward it well?
Mm,
And if we can look at that and being honest with ourselves, say, actually, no, then it's okay. What systems and processes do I need to get into place so that I can be prepared to receive and steward well the very things that I'm asking
mm.
God for, right? Because
Right.
we can get excited in business, say, God, I want that, I want that multi-million-dollar business. Da, 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 da. Okay, if I brought you a multi-million-dollar client right now, what would you do? Well,
Mm.
could you handle it? Could you handle it well? Is my name going to be glorified by the way you handle that business? Ooh,
Yeah, that's a
ooh.
really good question to ask yourself
But it's
beforehand.
right. But I think when it's like it's a good, practice for like some self-reflection and being honest with yourself and saying, no, okay, so if
Yeah.
I want to play at that level, you might even look to other, entrepreneurs, especially Christian entrepreneurs that have done it and are doing it. Like, okay, how do we go about setting the structure in place to best support what it is that we're looking to achieve in that business? And
Mm,
so, like, if you're not there yet, then what framework's going in? What
mm,
systems are getting locked in? What training are you getting? What knowledge are you picking up? I'm really big on moving faith forward in action and saying that if I'm praying and believing that God is hearing what I'm praying for, and I want to scale this business to be truly successful, truly impactful. Okay, God, how can I be taking steps that say that I have faith that you are with me in it?
mm. Yeah, because sometimes it does require faith, right, to make certain business decisions,
Mm-hmm.
and the operation of it, and who you decide to have on board with the client. And I'm kind of curious, since you were talking about clients, like, and I'm sure anyone who's done freelancing or even a business owner has dealt with, high maintenance clients. How do you navigate high maintenance clients?
Oh, you open this one up. Okay, one of the things
I had
one of
to,
the things I'm big on,
because
and I will
yeah.
tell you, I bring this into my discussions when I'm doing brand development too, in saying it's not just important to understand who you are for, it's
Hmm.
also important to understand who you're not for. Okay. And
Mm,
so,
yeah.
and I wouldn't say that every high maintenance client is a no-go, right? Sometimes it depends. It depends. You can have people who may be particularly needy, but they're still good clients, right? They're still
Oh, sure.
respectful. Like
Okay.
I have,
Yeah.
like I have some clients that like they will keep me busy for as many days as I will let them,
Yeah.
right? And
Right.
then I absolutely adore them. I have a ton of respect for them, and I understand where they're coming from because they're trying to move some big things up some big mountains, and they need a strong, team behind them to
Mm,
make those big things happen.
mhm,
And they don't come with disrespectful expectations, right?
right.
If you have a client that is taxing your energy, that is leaving you depleted when it comes to how you're able to show up for your other clients, then those are the ones where I'm like, you probably want to cut them loose, right? Like,
Yeah.
and understand that there is a cost, especially, I will say, especially early on in business, when we're in that stage of, but I just need sales. I just need revenue. I have to make money. I have to run. And sometimes you might take a difficult client because you're trying to get through that season. And by all means, God can grow you through that difficult client. But it's also important, I think, too, even as a faith measure, to recognize who is just a bad fit and who you don't have business aligning with to begin with. And I say that coming out of, like, I remember early on when I had somebody that was sent to me as a referral from another company that I had a lot of respect for. And this, from an earthly perspective, would have been a really great client. Like, this is somebody like 30-year politician, would have been, like, such a great connection. Man, to have that in my portfolio on down the list of earthly pros to list. Problem was, from a value perspective, especially considering the nature of my work is inherently promotional, some of the values that he promoted on that political platform were in contradiction to kingdom values.
Oh, wow.
And because of that, I was looking at it like from a financial standpoint. I'm like, God, I need to make money. Like, I'm really hurting right now, right? But from a value standpoint, it wasn't in alignment. And I had to understand that me saying yes to what should have been a no client could have ultimately hurt my business, if nothing, even from the perspective of me essentially queuing up the message that I was relying on me to make my way. Right. So with that particular instance, I did my due diligence and promise duty of saying, having the conversation with them. This is what I found. This is what you're going to need. But unfortunately, I can't help you. And I wasn't rude with him about it. I wasn't like pointing fingers because you do da 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 da. It's just, I'm not the best fit to help you in this given situation. This is probably, the type of professional you're going to want to look for who can meet these needs, and let him go. And it was cool to see how God responded with that, where within a matter of like 3 days, within the following 3 days, I cannot even tell you how many phone calls I got from people who I had no expectation of hearing from them at all, hadn't heard from them in a while, or people I didn't even know of, where God brought me the leads that I needed in that time. And it was just like a cool experience. But, to your question about like, with problem clients, challenging clients, is understanding that even in the times that maybe God doesn't show up immediately in that way, like there's still understanding that like our commitment to running kingdom businesses means that sometimes we're going to make decisions that are going to hurt in the moment, that it's going to like, we're going to feel sick in our stomach as we turn that person down or let that business go. We're going to get a knot and say, but God, what about, right? But that's where, your faith comes into play, and just saying, you know what, like, it's not always going to be an easy walk. And sometimes you have to understand too, like with clients that are not good fits for you, it's what does it cost you in terms of your time, your energy, your resources for taking that client on? Does it interfere with you being able to show up like you need to for your other clients? Like, I think a huge thing is in business that we have to learn is the value of safeguarding what's been entrusted to us for the people that it's been entrusted to us for, right? Because if I say yes to this other person that I really should have been saying no to, then I can't be available in the way that I need to be for the person that God may have had in mind for me to be present for. So there's always a cost. Every time you're saying yes to one thing, you're saying no to something else. And sometimes we don't even know what we're saying no to. And that's why we got to be very like, it's not saying that we get to this point. Like, I've seen some people get so like,
that's true,
wrapped up in like, if I don't hear God audibly tell me yes or no, then I make no action at all. Like, we can't necessarily do that, but to be locked in on like who we're here to work with, why we're here to work with them. And that's that where you get like, when you go through brand development, even, and it's not this, I don't say this to promote my own services, like, but just saying like, even if you're go flying solo, like really think hard and heavy about who your brand is, because that right there will serve as a North Star when you are faced with a lot of challenging decisions, whether it's what clients to work with, what subcontractors to work with, who to affiliate with, because there could be a lot of like connections. It might seem like this is going to be a great connection to help grow my business and get me in front of this audience. But it's like, if it ain't aligned, if it's out of alignment with what you've already come to understand, like who you are and who you're here for, you might want to take a minute to pause and think about that before you run in that decision. But
yeah, that is wisdom for sure. And it's really amazing how God, honored, your decision to say no to someone who wasn't aligning to those values. And you had other clients that came from the woodwork or pending clients that came into your place, and God honored your, your humility and obedience in that moment. So, and yeah, I that's just so good wisdom, I think, for any creative entrepreneurial person or business leader. And I think that's what we were saying before too with identity systems. I think once you have those identity and value systems in place, then the clientele that you're serving and who to say, and it makes it a little bit easier who to say no to and who to say yes to, right? And so, yeah, thank you for sharing that. So, wow, this time with you has gone by so quickly, and I'm just wondering, is there anything else you want to share regarding what we have talked about today that you want to bring to the table?
You got another 12 hours? No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean, I just really appreciate having the opportunity. I told you, even before we had a chance to, hit that button and go live. It's just something I genuinely love. I genuinely love business. I really do. But I especially genuinely love seeing people equipped and empowered. And that's what I love about it all. It's like when you see people, get the opportunity to gather the tools and the resources that they need to go out and bring their amazing value into the world, learn how to better communicate it with the world. And you see them just take off and soar. That's just, gosh, I could just I have my obsessions, right, with the kind of work that I do. And a big thing of that is just seeing people realize the contrast between the life that they may be living and the life that they could be living on the other side of them just giving God their yes, giving God their lives and letting him do with it what he will. And that's not always the world picture of like the success story. It's even better.
Yeah, it is even better. And it is better than what we think it is too, because we're putting ourselves in that kingdom alignment and putting ourselves in that design that God originally intended for us to fulfill in our lives from the beginning. So, guys, you can learn more about LaTricia's business at oxeniron.co. And she has a beautiful website with her portfolio there. If you want to learn more about her services and what she has to offer, you can go to her website. Is there anything you want to share about your business that I haven't touched on yet?
No, they're welcome. If they have any questions, they're certainly welcome to reach out. I recently launched thebrandrevivalist.com. That speaks a little bit more to the, and I don't think I gave that to you, but that speaks a little bit more to the consulting and advisory side of the work that I do. And so they're welcome to check out either platform. oxeniron.co is more where you're going to see more of the projects that we've gotten to do, some of the work product and the tangibles, the deliverables that we've gotten to work on, where again, Brand Revivalist is more like the personal brand that connects with like, the brand core work that we do. But yeah, so I really appreciate, having the opportunity to come on here, do the interview with you. Such a great host. Very much appreciate all of it, the whole conversation, all the questions. I just think it's great. And I love what you're doing, through your show. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that. That means a lot. And I love having wise creatives on my podcast and, bringing that to the table for other creatives to grab a hold on. Because I think everything you shared here was just chock full of wisdom that is going to help bring success for, kingdom success in business for others. So, so guys, you heard it. Go to our website. oxeniron.co. And then what is the website URL for the Brand Revivalist?
Yeah, it's just thebrandrevivalist.com.
Okay, thebrandrevivalist.com. Go to the website there, and you're also on social media. Follow her on that, on those platforms. So thank you again, LaTricia, for sharing just your wealth of experience and wisdom with us today.
So thank you.
My pleasure. Well, everyone, thank you so much for watching Talks with Gallagher. And